Hi, this is Mash Rundown. If you've been enjoying our movie reviews, subscribe and hit the like button down below. It really helps us out.
Today we're going to be doing our movie review for Soul. Soul is directed by Pete Docter. It stars Jamie Foxx as Joe Gardner and Tina Fey as 22.
The movie centers around Joe Gardner. He is a musician, in particular a jazz musician, and he's really good. And he goes to this other place when he plays music, so you know he's really good at it.
Yeah.
But his life hasn't really gone the way he wanted it to go, and he's stuck as a high school band teacher in the beginning of the movie. And essentially he goes to another realm and actually meets 22, who is a soul who isn't ready to come to Earth yet, basically. And is afraid of living. And on this journey with 22, he actually learns that life is more than just the sum of its parts. And that brings us into the themes, because life being more than the sum of its parts is essentially saying that life is more than the end goal. It's about the process, the journey, and learning to be happy in the moment. And that's a very big takeaway from this movie, and I think it's probably the biggest takeaway.
Yeah.
Don't focus on the end of the journey. Enjoy the process to get to the end of the journey. But it's not only about that big break or that big whatever it is that you're going after. It's about all the little things you do to get there. So in the movie, they do this in a beautiful way. They actually use a seed of a plant, and I know when we were kids we used to play with them like helicopters.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people actually have fond memories of it, and at some point they've either picked it up and looked at it or played with it. So it brings you back to that childhood innocence that reminds you to live each moment and enjoy each moment and be mindful in that moment, instead of just trying to rush through everything and not take care and notice of what's going on around you.
So in the story, Joe's very fixated on his big break, because that's his meaning in life. And through 22, he finds out not really about that big break. It's, like you say, the process of getting to the big break, appreciating the little things. And sometimes you're not going to quite make it to your big break, but you can enjoy the process along, and you don't need to have all your meaning in your passion. You can find meaning in other stuff as well.
Yeah. And sometimes your meaning changes.
Yes.
Because we meet the barber in the show, and at one stage, you know, he wanted to be a veterinarian, but life circumstances happens and he ends up being a barber. Kind of think of shame. He wanted to be this veterinarian and now he's not.
And he gets questioned about that. Aren't you upset because you couldn't follow your calling, your dream, your meaning? He's like, no, I'm making the best of it. I'm enjoying this. I meet interesting people. So you can still find meaning in your life even if you're not able to live your passion.
Or live plan A.
Yeah.
Because you can have other passions.
Yes.
And I think for the barber, meeting people, talking to people, making people happy is his plan B.
Yes.
Because he has a family, and so he'd rather give up that so that he can be with his family and make money and look after them.
We saw the barber for perhaps, 2-3 minutes in the movie, and such a deep, meaningful character. It's Pixar is brilliant with stuff like that.
That's beautifully
You
done.
don't need 20-30 minutes on screen to impart a message, to connect with the audience. Those 3 minutes with the barber was awesome.
Another theme that was quite prominent in the movie was death. And I think that's what I really liked from the trailer, is that fact that they were addressing death with children, so that it's not something that's sudden when someone experiences it. They already have this idea, or they've already conceptualized what death is.
And it was handled in a very adult way in the movie. It's an adult way. It's accessible to kids, obviously. It's a Pixar movie, but possibly one of their more mature movies.
Possibly, but I still think done in a way that children would still understand. And I really enjoyed that. I think it's something that can open conversations.
Yes.
And obviously when we talk about death, what goes hand in hand is religion. most of the time at least. And I think that the movie did this in a very inclusive way because they spoke about the great beyond. And that can be heaven, it can be
Valhalla.
it can be anything, whatever is appropriate to you, to your religion. So when you leave the movie and your kids may ask you about it, you can say no, it's heaven or whatever the case may be. So it left room to apply to everyone, which I really appreciated. What upset me with the movie, or not necessarily the movie, rather with the comments about the movie, is some people are saying that it's anti-Christian because it doesn't specifically say that the great beyond is Christian. And it kind of upsets me because the movie was being inclusive, and inclusivity doesn't mean it's excluding a religion. What it's doing is actually including everyone and allowing the movie to be accessible and relatable to more people.
Yes.
So inclusivity is not exclusion. And I wish that more people, more movies, more TV shows would be more inclusive. Another thing concerning religion is they spoke about Quiet Coyote as being a devil sign. So Quiet Coyote is this. It was very bizarre to me because I assumed it was some meaning in maybe American culture. And I actually went to go look it up after I heard some people complaining about it. And Quiet Coyote is actually a sign that teachers use in schools to get little kids to listen and look, especially when there's a lot of noise, because children respond very well to hand signals.
Just if it's not clear, we'll do a little quick demonstration. Quiet Coyote.
Fingers out.
Sign of the devil.
Fingers must be curled. The thumb can or cannot be there. So Quiet Coyote has nothing to do with the devil. This is the devil. This is Quiet Coyote.
And Spider-Man, which can be confused with the son of the devil, I suppose. But Spider-Man, devil, Quiet Coyote.
So it's not anti-Christian, it's not satanic or anything like that. I mean, it has meaning for little kids. And since the movie's made for little kids, a lot of children may have come across Quiet Coyote at school, so it's something they can relate to. And I thought that was so smart of Pixar to put something that has meaning to kids. And if they're too young, you can say, no, that's something that we'll discuss when you're a little bit older. Whatever the case may be, for an age-appropriate manner. So don't cut your kids off from the movie just because of that. I think it's something that needs to be spoken about. And diversity is good.
It's a Pixar film. It has fantastic animation. We expect it, we know it's going to be great. But at this point, with a lot of the scenes, it feels like they're just showing off with how good the animation is. We've watched a couple of other animated films recently. Even the background in Pixar films, there's so much detail, so much meticulous attention given to every single aspect of it. Like, it's hard to compare other animated films to Pixar films. They are that good.
And I think because of how good the animation is, the character development is helped and made even better, because Pixar normally does amazing character development to start off with, but just how amazing the animation is brings it to life.
Totally.
Yeah, so I think it only helps.
So the movie's called Soul. It's about a jazz musician with a lot of soul music. Music was so integral to this movie, from the plot of the movie to some of the visual elements in the great before and the great after. Music tied in everything. Probably because we were seeing it from the perspective of Joe, who was very much driven by his passion for music. Everything had a musical note to it. Everything had this connecting theme. It was well done. The music was good. It was really good.
And the score obviously was great as well. I think I'd like to pinpoint another thing when we talk about soul and the music, is that some people complained about the movie maybe stereotyping African American men. And I don't think that was the case. I think there's a very fine line between stereotyping and depicting a subculture. And I think this movie looked at a subculture. It looked at the fact that jazz is very much bound within certain African American populations in America.
Yeah.
And I think that this movie did it very well because jazz music and soul music is very much bound within certain populations of African Americans. So it wasn't saying all African Americans enjoy jazz and trying to be stereotypical and placing that on everyone. It was more about this specific subculture enjoys jazz
Yes.
and soul music. And I think it's important that we remain cognizant of the difference between stereotyping and portraying a subculture. We shouldn't ignore the fact that these subcultures exist because we're afraid that people are going to think we're stereotyping. We need to acknowledge different subcultures and realize it's beautiful and they matter, and we should tell stories from different points of view. And I think that's what Soul did. And I think in the movie you can see, for me, that it wasn't about stereotyping because, like we were speaking about with the barber earlier, he and Joe usually talk about jazz. But at one stage, they talk about something else, and he's like, it's so nice not to only talk about jazz.
Yes.
So even though he talks about jazz with Joe, it's not something that he's super passionate about. So it's not like all African Americans like jazz. It's like Joe likes jazz, and the barber speaks to Joe about jazz because Joe is the client. But it's not a stereotype placed on every single person in the movie, and I think that's what makes it different.
The movie's also very funny. I was laughing out loud many times throughout the movie. And it's definitely humor that young audiences will catch, older audiences will appreciate. There's a couple of really witty lines within it. So yeah, the interplay between Jamie Foxx and Tina Fey is so well done.
And I also think it was very nice to see Jamie Foxx as the lead, because you don't see African American men in the lead of a lot of animated cartoons.
No.
I thought that was a nice direction because, once again, it's being more inclusive. We're looking at different subcultures, we're looking at different cultures, we being inclusive with religion, and I think we need more of that diversity. We need to expose our children to more of that diversity so that we can lessen this implicit bias, we can lessen racism, and you only do that by being engaged with and seeing other people
Yes.
from different cultures, religions, and so forth.
So now we move on to the bad. For me personally, there was really nothing bad about the movie. It was a good Pixar movie. But
Yeah. For me, it's a different story. What irked me in the movie was when they spoke about personality development, and obviously, as a psychologist, I just can't get behind that. The way they portrayed personality development as something that is predetermined before your birth just rubbed me the wrong way. Personality development, all these little things like moody and happy and insecure and secure that they were talking and joking about in the movie, is not something that is hardwired into you when you are born. In reality, there's this nature versus nurture debate. So when we're talking about nature, is it something you're born with? You are born with certain predispositions. So it's possible for you to have this specific characteristic, and even more likely for you to have this specific characteristic. But it's not something that's 100% ingrained that no matter what, this is who you are. That's where the nurture comes in. So nurture is like your interactions with other people, especially your primary caregiver, whether it be mom, dad, granny, whomever it is, as well as school influences and all of that. Especially when you're very young and your brain is still busy developing, because obviously the way you interact with other people affects the way your brain develops. So essentially talking about neurobiology and the connections that nature and nurture have with each other and how they build up on each other. For example, if you're born, you have this predisposition to have a very high IQ. But in the circumstances where you are growing up, you're not stimulated, you don't go to school, the chance of you actually going to that full potential is very limited. So, for example, your predisposition is the ceiling, and so that's your nature part, and the nurture part is how close to that ceiling do you get. It's a very simplified version, but nonetheless, it kind of works like that. And I believe very strongly that personality development is something that happens both through nature and nurture. You cannot say when you're born, this is all you are. That changes by the people that bring you up. And it's problematic for me for many reasons. One of the reasons is if you are predetermined to be the specific person, have these specific characteristics, it means that you're not really at fault for anything you do. It also means that no matter how terrible your parents are towards you, it doesn't change the way you develop as a child. And we know that's not true scientifically. Your parents need to be good enough. They don't need to be perfect, but they need to be good enough for you to actually have a stable, secure attachment style and have a personality that's going to actually gel with other people. So I'm really not a fan of this predetermined philosophy of life. What we do, how others treat us when we're growing up matters, and it affects who you are at the end of the day. I also didn't like the fact that they made fun of certain personality characteristics. I can't remember exactly what it was in the movie, but it's something like the one was, I'm narcissistic. And then the guy was saying, oh, that's okay. It's Earth's problem. And I'm like, that's not funny. Because for some people, narcissism can lead to a personality disorder, and you're making fun of a mental illness. I didn't think that was funny, and I don't understand why Pixar would make fun of mental illnesses. Make fun of personality characteristics that can be very challenging to live with. And to me, it was done in a very sarcastic, funny way. It wasn't done in a humorous, oh, okay, you're making light of it. It was just done in a very dismissive, like, oh, well, kind of way. And I didn't like that at all. For me, that made the movie not worth watching, and I might have stopped watching in the first few minutes if it hadn't been for the fact that we were doing this review. Just because the way they showed personality development pissed me off so much. Kind of outweighs everything else in the movie for me. So when we go into the ratings, I'm struggling to give a rating because I can't in good conscience advise anyone to watch the movie because they mess up the explanation of how personality develops so much that I personally wouldn't want my kids to watch it. Because it's not something you're born with and, oh wow, tough shit. And it's not something that people should be making fun of. Mental illness is something that's serious, that hurts a lot of people. People struggle with it day to day, and I don't think we should be joking about it. And I don't think we should be teaching our children to make fun of people with it and say, oh well. So for me, I can't rate it because of that.
I will be rating the film, and I give it a good 7 out of 10. It is a good Pixar film. Of course, I don't have the intense psychology background that you do, so I don't really pick up on these things, and it doesn't bother me as much. Yeah, 7 out of 10 for the movie. It's good, it's fun. I laughed a lot throughout the movie, and it's an enjoyable Pixar movie. Not as good as some, but definitely up there.
So I'll be leaving the who should watch it to you then, because I personally feel like just that one thing made the movie not worth watching.
Who should watch this from my side? Anybody with kids. I mean, your kids are going to love it. Even adults, it's a good movie to watch. It's fun, it's enjoyable. It's a good waste of an hour and 40 minutes. And it definitely opens the door for discussion, even between adults. I mean, we had a good discussion about it as well. So definitely, if you're in the mood for discussion, watch the movie. Your kids will enjoy it. If you want to remember Pizza Rat, watch the movie because there's a little cameo there.
Yeah, I thought it was really sad that the personality development irked me so much and was done so poorly, in my opinion, that it made it not worth watching because the other themes in the movie were really well done.
With Soul being a very musical movie, what's your favorite style of music? Let us know in the comments down below.
Bye.
Later.